stars looked the same as they always did, but Commander Lauren Blake knew better than to trust appearances. She stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching the endless void of space through the viewport. Her ship was 3 days into a routine supply run to New Dakota, one of humanity's frontier colonies. Everything seemed normal, but something felt wrong. Lauren had been in space for 12 years, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Confederation. The Confederation was a group of 47 alien species that had been living together in peace for over 3,000 years. When humans made first contact back in 2186, everyone on Earth thought it was the beginning of a new golden age. The aliens welcomed humanity with open arms, shared their technology, and invited Earth to join their peaceful union. But Lauren remembered the promises that came with membership. Humanity had to follow the Harmony Protocols, a set of rules that banned certain technologies. No advanced artificial intelligence. No quantum weapons. No faster-than-light weapon systems. The Confederation said these technologies were too dangerous, that they had caused wars in the ancient past. Most humans accepted this explanation without question. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," said Danny Chen from the pilot's seat. He was young, barely 25, but he had steady hands and quick reflexes. "It's encrypted and marked urgent." Lauren walked over to the communication station. "Put it through to my private channel." She moved to her ready room, a small office just off the main bridge. The door slid shut behind her, and she activated the encrypted message. The face that appeared on her screen made her heart skip a beat. Admiral Patricia Novak, her former mentor and one of the highest-ranking officers in the Earth Defense Fleet. Patricia looked tired, older than Lauren remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she kept glancing to the side as if worried someone might be watching. "Lauren, if you're seeing this, then the automated system worked. I don't have much time, so listen carefully. Something is wrong with the Confederation. I've been investigating disappearances along the frontier, and what I've found doesn't match the official reports." Lauren leaned closer to the screen. Patricia had taught her everything about naval tactics, about leadership, about thinking for herself. If Patricia said something was wrong, then it was wrong. The missing research teams, the station's going dark, it's not equipment failure or natural hazards like they're telling us. I've found evidence that suggests deliberate action. Someone is targeting our people, and the Confederation is covering it up. I'm sending you coordinates to my last known location. If something happens to me, you need to investigate. Trust your instincts, Lauren. Trust what you see with your own eyes, not what they tell you to see. The transmission flickered, and Patricia's face showed sudden fear. "They're here." "Lauren, be careful. The Confederation isn't what we think it is. The Archons, they have been lying from the very beginning, and the truth is worse than you can imagine." The screen went black. Lauren sat in silence for a long moment, her mind racing. The Archons were the founding species of the Confederation, the ones who created the Harmony Protocols. They were supposed to be wise peacekeepers, guardians of galactic stability. Every human child learned about them in school, about how they saved the galaxy from chaos and war. Lauren pulled up the coordinates Patricia had sent. They pointed to a location in the Outer Rim, far from any established trade routes. It would take the Pathfinder 4 days to reach it, maybe 5 if they wanted to avoid detection. She returned to the bridge. Her crew looked up expectantly. Besides Danny at the helm, there was Sophie Turner at the engineering station and Dr. Vincent Hayes monitoring the medical bay remotely. They were good people, loyal and skilled. She trusted them with her life. "Change of plans," Lauren said. "We're making a detour. Sophie, I need you to mask our signature. Make it look like we're still on course to New Dakota if anyone checks." Sophie raised an eyebrow. She was brilliant with systems and computers, always finding creative solutions to technical problems. "That's going to require some creative routing through our communications array." "May I ask why we're hiding?" "Because I think we're about to stick our noses where someone doesn't want them," Lauren replied. She uploaded the coordinates to Danny's navigation system. "Take us here. Use the scenic route, and keep us off the main sensor grids." Danny studied the coordinates and whistled softly. "That's the middle of nowhere, Commander. Nothing out there but rocks and radiation." "Exactly," Lauren said, "which makes it perfect for hiding something." The Pathfinder changed course, its engines humming quietly as it slipped between the stars. Lauren spent the next 4 days reviewing everything she could find about the frontier disappearances. The official reports were sparse and unhelpful. A research team studying stellar phenomena simply stopped responding. A mining outpost went silent. A survey vessel failed to check in. Each incident was explained away with technical jargon and bureaucratic language that said nothing, while using many words. But when Lauren dug deeper, she found patterns. All the disappearances happened in remote locations. All involved small teams that wouldn't be missed immediately. And all the investigations were handled exclusively by Confederation officials, with human authorities kept at arm's length. On the fourth day, they reached the coordinates. Danny brought the ship to a stop near a small moon orbiting a gas giant. "Sensors aren't picking up anything unusual," he reported. "Just standard stellar radiation and some mineral deposits." "Do a detailed scan," Lauren ordered. "Look for artificial structures, power signatures, anything that doesn't belong." Sophie worked her console, adjusting the sensor arrays. After several minutes, she looked up with a frown. "There's something strange here. I'm detecting a low-level energy field, but it's not showing up on standard scans. It's almost like someone designed it specifically to hide from Confederation sensor technology." "Can you penetrate it?" Lauren asked. "Give me a few minutes." Sophie's fingers flew across her controls. "I'm adapting our sensors to cycle through different frequencies. If I can find the right one, we should be able to see through whatever they're using to hide." Lauren watched the main screen as Sophie worked. Slowly, an image began to form. The small moon wasn't empty after all. There was a facility built into its surface, concealed by sophisticated camouflage technology. The structure was large, easily the size of a small city, with multiple levels extending deep underground. "That's Confederation architecture," Vincent said, coming onto the bridge to see what they'd found. "But I don't recognize the design. It's not any standard installation I've ever seen." Lauren felt cold certainty settle in her stomach. "Because it's not supposed to exist. Sophie, can you tell if anyone's home?" "Life signs detected. Multiple species, including human. There's also significant power usage consistent with active research or manufacturing." Sophie paused, her face troubled. "Commander, I'm also detecting containment fields. The kind used for holding cells." Lauren made her decision. "We're going in. Prepare a boarding team. Vincent, bring medical supplies. Whatever's happening down there, I have a feeling people are going to need help." As they prepared to descend to the hidden facility, Lauren couldn't shake Patricia's last words from her mind. "The Confederation isn't what we think it is." She was about to find out exactly what that meant. The facility's airlock opened with a hiss that echoed through the empty corridor. Lauren led the boarding team inside, her pulse rifle held ready. Behind her came Danny, Sophie, and Vincent, along with 4 security officers from the Pathfinder. The corridor was clean and sterile, lit by cold blue lights that cast strange shadows on the metallic walls. "Stay alert," Lauren whispered. "We don't know what we're walking into." They moved deeper into the facility, following the layout that Sophie had mapped from the ship's sensors. The place felt wrong. There were no sounds except their own footsteps, no signs of normal activity. For a facility with life signs, it was eerily quiet. They found the first holding cell 10 minutes into their search. Through a transparent barrier, they could see 3 beings inside. One was human, a woman in her 30s with short dark hair. The other 2 were aliens Lauren recognized from Confederation databases. A reptilian draconian and a tall, thin being from a species called the Vril. Vincent rushed to the control panel beside the cell. "They're sedated but alive. I can wake them up, but we need to get them out of here first." Lauren nodded. "Do it." The barrier dropped, and they carried the unconscious prisoners back toward the airlock. But before they could reach it, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and automated voices spoke in the Archon language. "They know we're here," Sophie said, checking her handheld scanner. "Multiple security systems just activated. We need to move fast." They got the first 3 prisoners to the ship and returned for more. The facility was larger than Lauren had imagined. Corridor after corridor revealed more cells, more prisoners, more species she recognized, and some she didn't. They worked quickly, releasing everyone they found and guiding them to the Pathfinder. In one of the deeper levels, they found a human man in a research lab. Unlike the prisoners, he wasn't sedated. He was frantically gathering data files, shoving them into a storage device. When he saw Lauren and her team, he nearly jumped out of his skin. "Please, you have to help me," he said. His name tag read Greg Mitchell. I thought I was coming here to do legitimate research, but when I found out what they were really doing, I tried to leave. They wouldn't let me. I've been a prisoner here for 8 months. What is this place? Lauren demanded. Greg's hand shook as he continued downloading files. It's a research facility run by the Archons. They're studying different species, looking for ways to weaponize our unique biological traits. For humans, they're focused on our adaptability and pattern recognition. They're trying to understand why we solve problems differently than other species. Vincent looked at the medical equipment around the room. His face went pale. These are genetic manipulation tools, neural scanners. They've been experimenting on people. Not just people, Greg said. He pulled up a file on the lab's main screen. Every species in the Confederation. They've been doing this for thousands of years. The Archons didn't create the Confederation to keep peace. They created it to control everyone else, to make sure no other species ever becomes powerful enough to challenge them. Lauren felt her world tilting. That's impossible. The Confederation has maintained peace for 3 millennia. Peace through suppression, Greg said bitterly. The Harmony protocols weren't designed to prevent dangerous technology. They were designed to keep other species weak and dependent. The Archons have technology centuries beyond what they've shared, weapons that can destroy planets, artificial intelligence networks that monitor every communication in Confederation space. And worse, he finished downloading the files and handed the storage device to Lauren. This is everything I could gather. Experimental data, historical records, communications between Archon facilities. If you can get this to Earth, to the public, people will finally see the truth. The facility shook. Somewhere deep in the structure, explosions echoed through the corridors. Lauren's communicator crackled with Danny's voice from the ship. Commander, the facility just activated some kind of self-destruct sequence. We need to leave now. They ran. Greg led them through maintenance tunnels he'd mapped during his imprisonment. Behind them, sections of the facility began collapsing. The Archons weren't just trying to stop the intruders. They were trying to erase all evidence that this place ever existed. They burst out of an emergency exit, just as a massive explosion tore through the facility's central core. The shockwave threw them forward, and Lauren felt the heat wash over her back. Danny had brought the Pathfinder as close as possible, the ship's cargo bay doors open and waiting. They scrambled aboard, and Danny launched the ship away from the moon. Behind them, the facility disintegrated in a series of massive explosions. Within minutes, there was nothing left but debris and radiation. Lauren pulled herself to her feet in the cargo bay. Around her, rescued prisoners were being attended to by Vincent and the medical team. Some were waking up, confused and frightened. Others remained unconscious, their bodies weakened by months or years of captivity. She found Greg sitting against a bulkhead, his face buried in his hands. I worked there for 3 months before I realized, he said quietly. 3 months of thinking I was helping advance galactic knowledge. When I finally understood what the research was really for, I tried to warn people. They locked me up with the test subjects. Sophie appeared beside Lauren, holding the data storage device Greg had given them. Commander, you need to see this. I've been reviewing the files. It's worse than he said. They went to the briefing room where Sophie connected the device to the ship's computer. Files filled the screen, thousands of documents spanning centuries of history, test results on different species, genetic profiles, behavioral studies, and something Sophie had labeled in red text, culling protocol. Lauren opened the file and felt her blood run cold. The culling protocol was a contingency plan the Archons activated whenever a species advanced too quickly or showed signs of independent thinking. The file contained 17 case studies, 17 different species that had been removed from the Confederation over the past 3,000 years. Each case followed the same pattern. First came increased surveillance, then mysterious disappearances of the species' brightest minds. Then conflicts would erupt, civil wars or natural disasters that seemed to happen at suspiciously convenient times. Within a generation, the species would be extinct or reduced to a handful of survivors living in primitive conditions. And at the bottom of the current watch list, flagged with the highest priority level, was one word: humans. They're planning to eliminate us, Sophie whispered. The disappearances along the frontier, they weren't random. It's the beginning of our culling. Lauren looked at the data, her mind working through the implications. Humanity had only been part of the Confederation for 44 years, but in that time they'd made remarkable progress. Human scientists had proposed new theories in physics. Human engineers had found creative solutions to problems that had stumped other species for centuries. Human diplomats had started forming alliances and friendships across species lines. The Archons saw all of this as a threat. Humans didn't just accept what they were told. They questioned, they experimented, they pushed boundaries. In a system designed to maintain control through ignorance, human curiosity was dangerous. "We need to get this to Earth," Lauren said. "To Ambassador Martinez, to anyone who will listen." "The Archons monitor all official communications," Greg warned. "If you try to send this through normal channels, they'll intercept it and you'll disappear just like everyone else who learned too much." Danny spoke up from the doorway. "Then we deliver it in person. We take the Pathfinder back to Earth and hand this directly to people we trust." Lauren nodded slowly. It was risky. The moment they changed course back to Earth, questions would be asked. But they had no choice. The evidence on that storage device could change everything, could shatter the comfortable lies that the Confederation was built on. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Maximum speed. And Danny, make sure no one can track us. We're about to make some very powerful enemies." As the Pathfinder turned toward home, Lauren looked at the rescued prisoners resting in the medical bay. They'd saved a few dozen people today. But if the Archons succeeded with their culling, billions of humans would die. The clock was ticking, and Lauren knew that bringing the truth to light was only the first step. The hard part would be convincing people to believe it. Earth looked beautiful from orbit, a blue and white marble floating in the darkness of space. Lauren hadn't seen her homeworld in 2 years, and part of her wished this return was under better circumstances. The Pathfinder approached Earth's orbital defense network, transmitting clearance codes and requesting immediate priority docking at Geneva Station, the headquarters of Earth's Confederation delegation. Ambassador Kyle Martinez met them at the docking port himself. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd been representing humanity in the Confederation for 15 years, navigating the complex politics of galactic diplomacy with skill and patience. But when Lauren showed him the data storage device and explained where it came from, his calm diplomatic mask cracked. "Are you certain this is genuine?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I saw the facility with my own eyes," Lauren said. "I brought back prisoners who were being experimented on. And Greg Mitchell, one of the human scientists who worked there, he can verify everything." Martinez led them to a secure conference room deep in the station's administrative section. The walls were lined with signal dampeners and privacy shields, technology that would prevent any external monitoring. Once inside, he activated the room's security systems and locked the door. "Show me everything," he said. For the next 6 hours, they went through the files. Greg explained the research he'd seen, the experiments conducted on prisoners, the weapons technology far beyond what the Harmony protocols allowed. Sophie presented the historical data showing the pattern of species that had been eliminated over the centuries, and Lauren played the recordings she'd made inside the facility, visual proof that the Archons were running secret operations behind the Confederation's peaceful facade. Martinez sat in silence for a long time after they finished. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with anger and something that might have been fear. "I've spent 15 years believing we were part of something good, something noble. The Confederation promised us a place among the stars, protection, knowledge, peace. And all of it was a lie." "Not all of it," Greg said quietly. "The other species, most of them are as much victims as we are. They've been living under Archon control for so long that they don't even realize they're being suppressed. They think the Harmony protocols are for their own good. They trust the system because they've been taught to trust it for generations." Martinez stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth below. "If we reveal this, it will cause chaos. The Confederation will fracture. There could be war." "There's already war," Lauren said. "It's just been one-sided. The Archons have been systematically eliminating any species that might challenge them. We're next on their list, Mr. Ambassador. The only question is whether we're going to wait quietly for our turn or if we're going to fight back." Martinez turned to face them. "If we fight, we need allies. Other species who will stand with us when the truth comes out." Sophie pulled up another file from the data storage. "According to these records, we're not the only ones who've noticed something wrong. There are reports of investigations by Draconian intelligence, inquiries from the Vril Diplomatic Corps, even questions raised by some of the Confederation's internal oversight committees. The Archons have been covering up loose ends for years, but the cracks are showing. Then we need to reach out to those species, share what we've found, and build a coalition before the Archons realize what we're doing, Martinez said. He activated his secure communication panel. I'm calling an emergency session of Earth's Security Council. They need to see this immediately. Over the next 3 days, Earth's leadership reviewed the evidence. The Security Council met in continuous session, bringing in military advisors, intelligence analysts, and xenobiologists to verify the data. Every expert who examined the files reached the same conclusion. The evidence was genuine and the threat was real. General Marcus Webb, the head of Earth's military forces, was the most vocal in his response. He was a broad-shouldered man with a no-nonsense attitude and a strategic mind that had earned him respect across all branches of service. This is an extinction-level threat, he said during one of the council meetings. The Archons have the technology to wipe us out, and according to these files, they're planning to do exactly that. We need to prepare for the worst. But preparation was complicated. Earth's military was small compared to the Confederation's forces. The Harmony protocols had ensured that humanity never developed the weapons or ships needed for large-scale warfare. Everything Earth had built was defensive, designed to protect against pirates or natural disasters, not to fight a technologically superior enemy. We're not completely helpless, Webb continued. Over the past 20 years, we've been developing technology that technically complies with the protocols, but pushes their boundaries. Railgun systems that use kinetic energy instead of quantum physics. Stealth technology based on acoustic principles rather than band sensor jamming. We've been creative because we had to be, and that creativity might be our advantage. Ambassador Martinez took on the delicate task of reaching out to other species. He contacted the draconian Ambassador Zek first, a reptilian diplomat known for his sharp mind and deeper knowledge of Confederation history. Martinez shared select portions of the data, enough to demonstrate the pattern but not enough to reveal the full extent of what they'd discovered. Zek's response came within hours. He wanted to meet in person, in a location away from Confederation monitoring. They chose a neutral trade station on the edge of settled space, a chaotic hub where hundreds of species mixed freely and surveillance was nearly impossible. Lauren accompanied Martinez to the meeting, along with a security detail that included Danny and Sophie. Zek arrived with his own guards, massive draconians in ceremonial armor that barely concealed modern weapons. But when the two groups met in a private dock, Zek dismissed his guards and asked Martinez to do the same. I've suspected for years that something was wrong, Zek said once they were alone. My people have legends from before the Confederation, stories of a time when we were expanding into space on our own, developing our own technologies. Then the Archons came and offered us peace and prosperity. Within 3 generations, we forgot how to build starships without their help. We forgot how to dream of anything beyond what they allowed us to have. The same thing happened to humanity, Martinez said. They're very good at making control feel like kindness. Zek examined the data they'd brought. His eyes, golden with vertical slits, widened as he read. This culling protocol, my people nearly fell victim to it 2,000 years ago. There was a period in our history known as the Great Troubles, when civil war nearly destroyed our civilization. Our records say it was caused by political disputes, but the timing matches the pattern you found. We recovered, but only barely, and the Archons were there to help us rebuild. We owed them everything, or so we thought. Will your government stand with us? Lauren asked. Zek was quiet for a long moment. The draconian people value strength and honor. If I show them this evidence, if I prove that we've been living as pets in a cage we couldn't see, they will be furious. Yes, Commander, we will stand with you. The alliance grew. The Vril, an insectoid species with a hive mind intelligence, joined after their hive speaker Trill reviewed the evidence. The Vril had noticed discrepancies in Confederation scientific journals, places where research seemed to stop just before major breakthroughs. They'd assumed it was natural limitations, but the data showed it was deliberate suppression. Other species followed. Within 2 weeks, Martinez had assembled a coalition of 15 species, all of whom had seen the evidence and recognized the truth. They met in secret, coordinating their response, planning for what would come next. But secrets don't stay secret forever. On the 17th day after Lauren's return to Earth, an Archon fleet appeared in orbit. 20 ships, each one the size of a small city, their hulls gleaming with technology that made human vessels look like toys. At the center of the formation was the flagship of Executor Thane, one of the highest-ranking Archon military commanders. The message came directly to Ambassador Martinez. Thane's face appeared on screens across Geneva Station, his features alien and cold. The Archons were vaguely humanoid, tall and thin with pale skin and large dark eyes that showed no emotion. They spoke through translation devices that made their voices sound hollow and distant. "Humanity has violated Confederation law," Thane said. "You have stolen classified information from a secure facility. You have spread lies and sown discord among loyal member species. The Confederation Council has determined that Earth poses a threat to galactic stability. You have 24 hours to surrender all copies of the stolen data and submit to Confederation justice. Failure to comply will result in punitive action." The transmission ended. Lauren, standing beside Martinez in the command center, felt her heart pounding. Punitive action was code for military strikes. The Archons were preparing to destroy Earth's orbital defenses and bombardment the planet itself if necessary. "They're not going to give us a fair trial," Webb said. "This is the beginning of our culling. They're just wrapping it in legal language to maintain." The Kuiper Belt was a region of frozen rocks and ice beyond Neptune's orbit, far from the inner solar system where most of humanity lived. Lauren had made the journey dozens of times during her career, but she'd never known what was hidden there. The Pathfinder followed coordinates General Webb had provided, moving carefully through the debris field until Sophie's sensors picked up something that shouldn't exist. "There," Sophie said, pointing at her display. "Energy signatures. Multiple ships all powered down to minimal levels. That's why nobody ever spotted them before." A hidden base materialized as they approached. It was built into a massive asteroid, hollowed out and reinforced with technology that went far beyond civilian engineering. Docked inside were 7 ships that made Lauren catch her breath. They were sleek and deadly, built for combat in ways that Earth's official fleet could never match. The largest vessel was called the Defiant. It was twice the size of the Pathfinder, armed with railgun batteries that could punch through armor using pure kinetic force. No quantum physics, no violations of the Harmony protocols, just old-fashioned Newton's laws applied with modern engineering. The ship also carried experimental shield technology, reverse-engineered from fragments of Archon equipment that humanity had quietly studied over the years. General Webb's face appeared on the communication screen as Lauren brought the Pathfinder into dock. "Welcome to Project Midnight, Captain Blake. Everything you see here has been built in secret over the past 5 years. The Archons monitor our official shipyards and manufacturing facilities, but they never thought to watch the outer system. We've been using automated mining equipment and remote construction drones to assemble these vessels piece by piece." "How many people know about this?" Lauren asked. "Less than 100, all of them carefully vetted. The crews are volunteers, men and women who understood we might need to defend ourselves someday despite the Confederation's promises of peace." Webb paused. They were right to worry. Lauren transferred her command crew to the Defiant. Danny took the helm, his hands running over controls that were more responsive than anything he'd flown before. Sophie moved to the engineering station, already studying the ship's systems with the focused intensity she brought to every technical challenge. Vincent established a medical bay that could handle combat casualties, something he'd trained for but hoped never to use. The rest of the task force filled out with volunteers from Earth's defense fleet. Engineers who'd helped build the secret ships, pilots who'd trained in simulators for scenarios that weren't supposed to be possible, soldiers who understood they were about to face an enemy with superior technology, and their only advantages would be creativity and determination. Greg Mitchell came aboard as well, despite Lauren's suggestion that he stay somewhere safe. "I spent 8 months in an Archon prison," he said. "I'm not hiding while other people fight for humanity's survival." They had 20 hours before Executor Thane's ultimatum expired. 20 hours to prepare for a battle that nobody expected them to win. Lauren gathered the task force commanders in the Defiance briefing room and laid out the situation with brutal honesty. "We're outgunned, outmatched, and outnumbered," she said. "The Archon fleet has weapons that can turn a planet's surface into molten glass. Their shields can absorb more damage than we can possibly deliver. In a straight fight, we lose in minutes. So we don't fight straight," said Commander Paul Rogers, captain of the destroyer Vanguard. He was an older officer with gray in his beard and scars that told stories of a long career. We use hit-and-run tactics and stay mobile, force them to chase us through the asteroid fields where their size works against them. We also have one weapon they don't expect, Sophie added. She pulled up schematics on the briefing room display. Greg and I have been working on something based on the data we recovered from the Archon facility. A computer virus designed specifically to infiltrate their surveillance network. The Archons banned artificial intelligence development because they knew it was one of the few technologies that could match their own systems. But humans have been quietly researching AI for decades, just not in any way the protocols could detect. Lauren leaned forward. What does this virus do? It doesn't destroy anything, Greg explained. Instead, it broadcasts. Once we introduce it into the Archon network, it will hijack every communication device, every computer system, every display screen across Confederation space. And it will show everyone the evidence we found. The experiments, the culling protocols, the proof of 17 extinct species. Everything. The truth will spread faster than the Archons can possibly contain it, Sophie continued. Species across the galaxy will see what's been done in the name of peace and stability. The illusion will shatter. But we need to get close enough to their command ship to introduce the virus, Lauren said, understanding the plan. Which means someone has to fly directly into the heart of that fleet. The briefing room fell silent. Everyone understood the implication. It was a suicide mission, the kind of plan that only worked in stories or desperate last stands. The Defiant has the best shields and the fastest engines, Danny said quietly. We're the only ship that has a chance of getting close enough. Lauren looked at her crew, seeing the determination in their faces. They'd all volunteered for this, knowing the risks. She thought about Patricia Novak, who'd tried to warn her and paid the price. She thought about the billions of humans on Earth below who were going about their lives, unaware that their entire species was scheduled for extinction. Then we make it count, Lauren said. Paul, your ships will engage the Archon fleet and draw their attention. Make them think we're mounting a desperate defense. Danny will use the chaos to bring the Defiant in close to Thane's flagship. Once we deliver the virus, the whole galaxy will know the truth. Whatever happens after that, at least we'll have ended the lie. The task force launched from the hidden base 18 hours later, 7 human ships against an Archon fleet that had never known defeat. The odds were impossible. The mission was insane, and every single person aboard knew they probably wouldn't survive. But they flew out to meet the enemy anyway, because sometimes the only choice left is whether you face the darkness standing up or on your knees. Earth's orbital defense stations had been preparing as well. General Webb had quietly mobilized every military asset humanity possessed, positioning them to support the task force. It still wasn't enough to win a conventional battle, but it might be enough to create the opening they needed. The Archon fleet hung in space above Earth, a wall of deadly technology that had maintained the Confederation's peace through the threat of overwhelming force. Executor Thane sent one final message to Geneva Station, demanding humanity's surrender. Ambassador Martinez responded with words that would be remembered for generations. We will not surrender to oppression dressed as protection. We will not bow to tyranny that calls itself peace. Humanity rejects your ultimatum, and we invite the rest of the galaxy to stand with us in rejecting the lies you've built your empire upon. The Archon fleet began moving into attack position. Their weapons powered up, energy readings spiking as they prepared to demonstrate the price of defiance. On Earth below, billions of people watched the skies, many of them praying, some of them angry, all of them waiting to see if their species would survive the next few hours. Lauren stood on the bridge of the Defiant, her hand steady despite the fear she felt. Around her, the crew worked with calm efficiency, each person focused on their role in the desperate plan. Danny's fingers moved over the helm controls, plotting a course that would take them through impossible dangers. Sophie monitored the virus program, ready to deploy it the moment they reached their target. Vincent prepared medical facilities for casualties that everyone knew would come. All ships report ready, Paul Rogers said over the command channel. Task force is in position. Lauren took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. This is Captain Blake to all ships. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that's been suppressed, controlled, and deceived by the Archons. Today we end the illusion. All ships engage the enemy. The battle for humanity's survival began. Earth's task force accelerated toward the Archon fleet, 7 small ships charging against impossible odds. Behind them, Orbital defense stations opened fire, adding their weapons to the desperate assault. The Archons responded with devastating force, their energy weapons tearing through space toward the human vessels. But humanity had one advantage the Archons had never encountered. Humans didn't fight by the book. They improvised, adapted, found solutions in places where no solutions should exist. The task force scattered and reformed in patterns that confused Archon targeting computers. They used the asteroid field as cover, popping out to take shots before disappearing again. They coordinated their attacks in ways that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated chaos. And in the middle of the battle, the Defiant began its run toward Executor Thane's flagship, carrying a weapon more dangerous than any bomb or missile. The Truth, ready to be set free. The space around Earth erupted in fire and light. Energy beams from Archon weapons crossed with human railgun rounds, creating a deadly dance of destruction. The Vanguard took a hit that sheared off its port side, but Paul Rogers kept his ship in the fight, returning fire even as emergency systems struggled to contain the damage. The destroyer Phoenix rolled underneath an Archon cruiser, close enough that their shields scraped against each other, firing point-blank into vulnerable sensor arrays. Lauren watched the tactical display from the Defiance bridge, seeing how her task force was fighting. They were taking terrible losses, but they were also doing something the Archons hadn't expected. They were learning, adapting, finding weaknesses in an enemy that had grown comfortable with overwhelming superiority. "Target their communication relays," she ordered. "We don't need to destroy their ships, just blind them to each other." Danny wove the Defiant through the chaos, his flying more instinct than calculation. He'd learned to read the flow of battle, to sense where the enemy's attention would be focused and slip through the gaps. The ship shuddered as glancing hits struck their shields, energy bleeding off in cascades of light. But the experimental technology held. Sophie counted down their approach to the Archon flagship. 2,000 kilometers and closing. Their shields are at full strength. We're going to need them to drop even for a second or we won't be able to deliver the virus. Greg was working beside her, his fingers flying over the interface. "I can try to force a gap. If I can overload one section of their shield grid with a concentrated burst from our railguns, it might create an opening. But it will only last a fraction of a second. Then we'll make that fraction count," Lauren said. She opened the command channel. "All ships, this is Blake. We're making our final approach. We need everything you've got on the flagship. Target their port shield emitters. Give us that opening." The response came from 6 damaged but still fighting human vessels. They broke off their individual engagements and converged on Executor Thane's flagship, concentrating their fire on a single point. The Archon ship was massive, its shields capable of absorbing punishment that would vaporize smaller vessels. But under the sustained barrage from multiple directions, a weak point began to form. Thane recognized the danger too late. He ordered his escort ships to intercept the Defiant, but the human task force had positioned themselves perfectly. Every Archon vessel that tried to reach Lauren's ship had to run a gauntlet of human fire. They were buying time with their lives, and they knew it. "Shield gap forming," Sophie reported. 3 seconds until we're in range. 2 seconds now." Danny pushed the Defiant's engines to maximum, the ship leaping forward with acceleration that pushed everyone against their seats. They shot through the weak point in the Archon shields like a bullet through paper, emerging inside the flagship's defensive perimeter. "Deploy the virus," Lauren ordered. Sophie activated the program that she and Greg had built. It launched from the Defiant's communication array, invisible packets of code that spread through the Archon ship's network, like water finding cracks in stone. The virus was designed to look like standard communication protocols, something that wouldn't trigger security systems until it was too late. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then every screen on the Archon flagship flickered. Every communication device across the Confederation network received an unexpected data burst. Every monitoring station, every personal device, every public display suddenly showed the same thing. The evidence. The experiments. The culling protocols. 17 extinct species. 3,000 years of lies. The virus spread faster than the Archons could possibly contain it. It jumped from system to system, from world to world, replicating and broadcasting the truth to billions of beings across hundreds of planets. The carefully maintained illusion that the Confederation represented peace and prosperity shattered in an instant. On the Archon homeworld, Citizens watched in horror as their government's crimes were revealed. On draconian vessels, warriors saw proof that their great troubles had been manufactured by the people they'd trusted. Across the Vril Hive networks, the collective intelligence processed the information and reached an immediate consensus. The Archons had betrayed them all. Executor Thane's face appeared on every screen aboard the Defiant. His calm mask had cracked, replaced by fury that made his alien features even more unsettling. You have committed an act of war against the entire Confederation. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. The Confederation doesn't exist anymore, Lauren replied. You destroyed it the moment you decided some species were worthy of truth and others were only worthy of control. We just helped everyone else see what you really are. Thane cut the communication and opened fire. The Defiant's shields flared as massive energy weapons struck them. Alarms blared across the bridge and Sophie reported critical damage to multiple systems. They delivered the virus, but they were still inside the enemy's defensive perimeter, surrounded by ships that wanted them dead. Hang on, Danny said through gritted teeth. He spun the Defiant in a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible for a ship that size, rolling underneath another barrage and firing their aft weapons as they passed. The railgun round struck an Archon escort ship's engines, and the enemy vessel spun out of control. But there were too many of them. The Defiant was fast and well built, but it was still just one ship against an entire fleet. Another hit struck their port side, and Lauren felt the deck lurch beneath her feet. Emergency lights flickered as primary power systems struggled to compensate for the damage. Then something unexpected happened. New ships appeared on the tactical display, dozens of them jumping into Earth's orbital space from faster-than-light transit. Lauren's heart sank, assuming they were Archon reinforcements. But Sophie's sensors told a different story. They're not Archons, Sophie said, her voice filled with wonder. They're Draconian ships, and Vril, and at least 6 other species I can identify. They're broadcasting on open channels, saying they're here to stand with Earth. The new arrivals opened fire on the Archon fleet. Ships that had been allies hours ago suddenly became enemies, united by the revelation of how thoroughly they'd all been betrayed. The battle shifted from humanity's desperate last stand to something larger, a rebellion spanning multiple species. Executor Thane found himself surrounded. His fleet, which had been preparing to demonstrate overwhelming force against a single species, now faced a coalition that outnumbered his ships 3-1. More vessels arrived with each passing minute, as word spread across the Confederation and species made their choice. Thane sent a transmission to his own home world, requesting reinforcements and authorization to use the Confederation's most devastating weapons. But the response he received wasn't what he expected. Archon Command informed him that riots had broken out across their home world, that their own people were demanding answers about the revealed crimes. The reinforcements weren't coming. He was on his own. Facing impossible odds, Thane made a decision born of desperation or perhaps pride. He refused to retreat. His flagship turned to face the combined fleet, weapons charging for one final devastating strike against Earth itself. He's targeting the planet, Sophie reported. Energy signature indicates he's preparing to fire their main weapon. It could kill millions. Lauren didn't hesitate. Danny rammed them. The pilot looked back at her, understanding the order's implication. Captain, if we do that, we won't survive the collision. We won't survive if we don't, Lauren replied. All hands, brace for impact. It's been an honor serving with you all. The Defiant's engines roared to full power one final time. The ship accelerated directly toward Executor Thane's flagship, its hull glowing from the friction of passing through debris and energy fire. Other ships in the Coalition fleet realized what Lauren intended and added their own fire to the desperate gambit, trying to weaken the Archon vessel's shields before the collision. At the last second, another ship interposed itself. The Vanguard, Paul Rogers' destroyer, had suffered critical damage in the early fighting. Now Paul used his dying ship as a shield, ramming the Archon flagship's weapon systems. The collision destroyed both vessels in a massive explosion that lit up Earth's orbital space like a second sun. The shockwave threw the Defiant backward. Danny fought the controls, trying to keep the ship stable as they tumbled through space. Systems failed across the board, and for a long moment Lauren thought they were going to break apart. Then the Defiant stabilized. They were alive. Damaged, barely functional, but alive. And when Lauren looked at the tactical display, she saw that Thane's flagship was dead in space, its weapons offline, its shields down, life support failing. The battle ended not with a bang but with a whimper. The remaining Archon ships, seeing their commander defeated and facing overwhelming opposition, powered down their weapons and requested terms for surrender. They were taken into custody by a joint task force of multiple species, their crews detained pending investigation into 3,000 years of crimes. Lauren sat in the captain's chair, exhausted and shaking from adrenaline. Around her, the bridge crew was celebrating their survival with quiet relief. Danny had tears running down his face. 3 months after the battle, Captain Lauren Blake stood in a garden on Earth looking up at the stars. The wounds from that day had healed physically, though she still walked with a slight limp from injuries sustained when the Defiant nearly broke apart. The deeper wounds, the ones that came from learning that the peaceful galaxy she'd believed in was built on lies, those would take longer to heal. The garden was part of the new assembly complex being built outside Geneva. Unlike the old Confederation headquarters, this place had been designed with input from every species that chose to participate. It featured plants from dozens of worlds, growing together in carefully managed ecosystems that proved different species could coexist without one dominating the others. The engineers say the Defiant can be repaired, Danny said, walking up beside her. He'd been promoted to commander and offered his own ship, but he'd chosen to stay with Lauren's crew. Some teams just worked well together and breaking them up seemed wrong. It'll take another 6 months, but she'll fly again. Good, Lauren replied. I've gotten used to that ship. It would feel wrong to fly anything else. Sophie joined them, carrying a data pad filled with reports from the ongoing investigation into Archon facilities. They'd found 17 more secret research stations scattered across the galaxy, each one containing evidence of experiments and suppression. The sheer scope of what the Archons had built over 3,000 years was staggering. The Vril discovered something interesting, Sophie said. Apparently the Archons weren't always like this. About 4,000 years ago, they had a civil war over how to interact with younger species. One faction wanted cooperation and sharing knowledge. The other faction believed in control and manipulation for the greater good. The control faction won, and they've been running things ever since. So there were good Archons who tried to stop this, Lauren said. They just lost. There are still good Archons, Sophie replied. We've been getting messages from their reform movement. They're trying to rebuild their society based on the principles their ancestors abandoned. It's going to take generations, but they're committed to it. Vincent Hayes approached the group, accompanied by Greg Mitchell. The scientist had become something of a hero to the research community, speaking at universities and scientific forums about the importance of questioning authority and seeking truth even when it was uncomfortable. He looked healthier than he had in the desperate days aboard the Pathfinder, the haunted look in his eyes slowly fading. I've been invited to speak at the Draconian Science Academy, Greg said. They want to hear about human research methods, how we approach problems differently than other species. Ambassador Zek thinks there's a lot we can learn from each other if we actually share information honestly instead of filtering everything through political concerns. Are you going to accept? Lauren asked. I think so, Greg replied. For years I thought science was about following protocols and staying within established boundaries. But real science is about asking questions no one else thinks to ask. Humans are good at that, but we're not the only ones. If we can teach other species to think that way and learn from how they approach problems, imagine what we could accomplish together. Admiral Patricia Novak joined them as the sun began setting over the mountains. She'd been found alive in an Archon detention facility, one of dozens of individuals from various species who'd gotten too close to the truth and been quietly imprisoned. She was thinner than Lauren remembered, her hair now completely white, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence they always had. I've been asked to take command of the new Joint Defense Initiative, Patricia said. Ships and personnel from 15 different species, working together to ensure nothing like the Archon conspiracy happens again. I wanted to ask if you'd consider being my second in command, Lauren. Lauren looked at her mentor, seeing the trust and respect in Patricia's expression. It was an incredible opportunity, a chance to help shape the future of galactic security. But she thought about the Defiant, about her crew, about the frontier worlds where strange things still happened in the darkness between stars. I'm honored, Admiral, but I think I'm better suited to staying out there. Lauren gestured toward the sky. Someone needs to keep exploring, keep asking questions. Make sure we notice when something doesn't add up. That's what got us into this mess, and it's what will keep us out of future ones. Patricia smiled. I hoped you'd say that. The galaxy needs people who won't accept comfortable answers. Just promise me you'll check in more often this time. Ambassador Martinez emerged from the assembly building, accompanied by representatives from 24 species. The gathering had been meeting for weeks, hammering out the framework for a new galactic community. One based on transparency and consent rather than hidden control. We've reached a preliminary agreement, Martinez announced to the assembled group. No more protocols that limit technological development. No more restrictions on artificial intelligence or weapons research. Each species will be free to pursue their own path, with the understanding that transparency and cooperation benefit everyone more than secrets and control. What about security? Asked Hive Speaker Trill, the Vril representative. Her insectoid features made her expressions hard to read, but her concern came through clearly in her translated words. Without some form of coordination, won't we just descend into chaos? Possibly, Martinez admitted. Freedom is messy and sometimes dangerous, but the alternative is what we just escaped from, a system where someone else decides what's best for you, where innovation is suppressed in the name of stability, where entire species can be erased and nobody questions it. I'll take dangerous freedom over safe slavery any day. Ambassador Zek stood, his reptilian form towering over most of the other representatives. The draconian sovereignty agrees. We have lived too long under the illusion of peace. True peace cannot be imposed from above. It must be built through genuine respect and voluntary cooperation. One by one, the other species voiced their agreement. Not everyone was comfortable with the uncertainty that freedom brought, but they all recognized that going back to the old system was impossible. The illusion had been shattered, and you couldn't force people to unsee the truth. Lauren watched the proceedings and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not the naive hope of thinking everything would be perfect, but the harder, more valuable hope that came from knowing people could change, could learn, could choose to do better even when the easier path was available. That evening, Lauren returned to Geneva Station and the Defiant. The ship was in dry dock, surrounded by repair crews from Earth, Draconia, and half a dozen other worlds. They worked together, sharing techniques and technologies that the Harmony protocols would have kept separate. The Defiant would emerge from the repairs stronger than before, incorporating innovations from multiple species into a vessel that represented cooperation rather than control. Danny was already on the bridge, running diagnostics on the helm systems. Sophie was in engineering, designing improvements to the shield generators based on what they'd learned during the battle. Vincent had established connections with medical personnel from other species, building a knowledge base that would benefit everyone. How long until we're space-worthy? Lauren asked. 4 months if we push it, Danny replied. Where are we going? Lauren pulled up a star chart showing the frontier regions, the vast unexplored territories where mysteries still waited to be discovered. Before the battle, she would have worried about what dangers might be lurking out there. Now she understood that the biggest danger had always been the one hiding behind friendly smiles and promises of safety. Everywhere, she said. There's a whole galaxy out there that's been suppressed for 3,000 years. Imagine what we'll find now that people are free to actually explore it, to push boundaries, to ask questions that were previously forbidden. Over the following months, the Defiant was repaired and upgraded. When the ship finally launched from Earth orbit, it did so as part of a mixed fleet. Human vessels flying alongside Draconian cruisers, Vril scout ships, and vessels from a dozen other species. Not because they were forced to cooperate by some higher authority, but because they chose to explore together. Lauren stood on the bridge as the Defiant engaged its faster-than-light drive, leaving Earth's solar system behind. The journey ahead would be full of unknowns, challenges that couldn't be predicted or controlled. But that was the point. Humanity hadn't started the war against the Archons because there had never been a war in the traditional sense. There had only been oppression so normalized that most people didn't recognize it as oppression. What humanity had done was end the illusion. They'd asked uncomfortable questions, refused to accept convenient lies, and forced the galaxy to see the truth about itself. That truth had been painful and disruptive, shattering comfortable certainties and forcing everyone to rebuild their understanding of how the galaxy worked. But truth, no matter how uncomfortable, was always better than a beautiful lie. Freedom, no matter how chaotic, was always better than orderly oppression. And the chance to determine your own destiny, even with all its risks and uncertainties, was always better than having someone else decide your fate for you.